Good morning, and that's hot. Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton. We're in our open and welcoming community. We live our message of hope, love, justice, and joy. We extend a special welcome to our visitors this morning. We're really glad you're here and invite you to stop by our welcome table after worship in Robinson Lounge so that we can answer your questions and get to know you a little bit. Again, welcome to our congregation. We're very glad you're here. We have a few announcements this morning. First, today in our month of brunches, we have the Coming of Age brunch, which is the high point of our... Oh. Okay. Hello? It went... the mic went off. Yeah. The high point of our faith development for children and youth is the Coming of Age program. The youth and their mentors will go on retreat at Murray Grove in South Jersey for a whole day to prepare for sharing their credo statements with the congregation. So come to the brunch today, eat, be merry, be generous, and help send them on their way. That's after service today. Second, our UU Spring Sale is only 6 weeks away. It's going to be Friday, May 3rd and Saturday, May 4th. So we need so many people to join the fun to make our spring sale a huge success while helping our community and making UU friends. Many volunteer opportunities are available during setup week, which starts Sunday, April 28th, and on sale days, Friday evening and 9 to 2 on Saturday. So you can sign up out in Robinson Lounge at the spring sale table or go to the Sign Up Genius on the UUCP website. And also, even if you don't have time to volunteer, we need always donations. So if you're spring cleaning around this time, it is a great time to sort your unused and stored away clothes, furniture, and household goods that others can use. You can even email the spring sale folks early on and make sure that your big item, valuable item gets valued. You can also pre-order plants and flowers at a discount. Again, order forms are at the spring sale table and online. The deadline for those plants is Friday, April 5th. Also today, UU Princeton member Andy Maskell and CPA Dennis Kilfeather will offer the program Qualified Charitable Donations. That's today, 12 noon at Foz Theater. They'll help us understand this program from the IRS, established to make tax-free transfers directly to charities each year, regardless of income or filing status. That is 12 noon in Foz Theater. And additionally, our Loaves and Fishes outreach ministry is coming up this weekend. We need sandwich makers to converge in the UUCP kitchen this Friday, March 29th, from around 5 to 8 p.m., making peanut butter sandwich lunch bags and baking brownies and bringing them to church. So we can offer Loaves and Fishes some homemade treats as well. Loaves and Fishes also needs drivers to deliver to St. Mary's in Trenton this Saturday, March 30th. Please see Louise Senior after the service in Robinson Lounge to learn more and sign up. You can find her behind the spring flowers. And as Bill mentioned last week, UUCP has a new initiative, UUCP Playtime, which I could use some of. All are welcome to stay after service on the fourth Sunday of each month for unstructured playtime and fellowship. Just meet on the playground next to the woods on our campus, or if the weather isn't great, just hang out here in Robinson Lounge. No need to register. Just show up and have a good time. You can email playtime@uucp.org. And lastly, mark your calendars. Our spring egg hunt will take place next Saturday, Easter Sunday, after worship. All are welcome. It's a lot of fun, and we do need volunteers in several different capacities. Please see the announcement in your happenings email for all of the different ways you can help our kids have a fun spring egg hunt. Whew. Okay, and so now we're going to have our chalice lighting. Our chalice words for this special service today from Mary, who I will introduce after. Our chalice words today come from Friedrich Schiller, in English rather than German, because I was not going to try that. Joy, a spark of fire from heaven, daughter from Elysium, drunk with fire, we dare to enter, a holy one inside your shrine. Your magic power binds together what we by custom wrench apart. All men will emerge as brothers where you rest your gentle wings. Good morning. So when I volunteered for the service a month or so ago, I really had no idea what I was going to write, although that is true for most things that I volunteer for. I just told Reverend Bill that as a musician and a big history nerd, I thought the theme sounded cool. Music and history interact a lot more than you might think, but I feel like Beethoven is one of the pinnacles. For instance, did you know that his third symphony, known as the Eroica, was originally supposed to be dedicated to Napoleon, and then he thought better of it? Things like that fascinate me, which is probably why in the continuing theme, I went to college not quite knowing what I was going to do and ended up with a joint degree in history and literature. In literature, there's a saying, real life writes the plot. And I think the most apt way to apply that to music might be you compose your own score, but the rest of life inevitably provides the final arrangement. This is especially true with choral music. Something like the finale of Beethoven's Ninth can resonate in a million different ways, in a million different years, depending on the voices you have, the orchestra, the room's acoustics, the recording equipment, everything. And so I should have known life wrote the arrangement for me this past month. I was sitting at work on Friday the 15th and took a break to check my phone notifications. Most of the time, they're silly, fleeting, ephemeral. But last week, there was one that stopped me in my tracks, a Facebook tag from my old classmate, Lindsay Corwin, sharing the post announcing that our choir master, Janet Westrick, founder of the Princeton Girl Choir, had died the previous day. You meet many people who arrange your life in the course of your childhood, but there are always a few who stand out. Jan Westrick was one. In another moment of serendipity with Beethoven, it was 1989, a year resonant with the European dreams of Friedrich Schiller, that would send Jan and me on a course toward each other. My family and I moved to Princeton in June-ish 1989, when my father got a job at the university's music library. And around that same time, Jan, then music teacher at the Princeton Day School, looked around at the success of the American Boy Choir. She admired it, but then she thought, well, now, why isn't there a group like that for girls? Obviously, at 4 years old, I was not aware of any of this context. I just always remember a house where choral music was constant. Both of my parents loved to sing, even if it was my father who went out and made money at it in the Boston early music scene. By the mid-1990s, I could sing along enthusiastically with Julie Andrews as Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady, as well as most of the catalog of Tom Lehrer. Apparently, I was good enough at both that Dad would soon take me off to auditions for the girl choir. But the joy that I learned from Jan and my fellow choristers was something past the individual glory of hitting a high A, say, in Gilbert and Sullivan's Never Mind the Why and Wherefore, which I may try to again these days. It was Schiller's communal magic power, binding a choir together in harmony, first with my fellow second sopranos, then with the altos, and sometimes even with the symphony orchestra. Not that it was easy. I was 9 and stubborn and neurodivergent, and nothing involving a group comes easy with that combination. I would whine in the car some Mondays about how there were other things I wanted to do. Why did I have to rush through dinner and go to a completely different town? But once I was sitting there in the PDS music room, I always had fun. For the first time, I got the utter rush of a productive dress rehearsal, of knowing that something we, not me, but we, had worked on for 8 weeks was finally coming together. I knew the ineffable peace of finishing an ancient carol in tune while the candles sparkled around us on a dark mid-December night. And I even got the small pleasure of making friends on the job as older choir members raised money by providing holiday gift wrapping services at the old Borders location at the Princeton Shopping Center. Those 5 years in the choir took me places, quite literally. We got to go to Avery Fisher Hall and perform with Yo-Yo Ma, who encouraged several dozen gobsmacked choristers to call him Uncle Yo, which I still do 30 years later. Because of the scholarship program that the Girl Choir established, I got to tour and perform in England, in France, and in Catalonia. Janet Westrick and the first choir business manager, Janet Perkins, the Janets, knew that the purpose of the choir was not to reify the socioeconomic divisions of the surrounding area, but join us together in song in spite of them. The girl choir, with its harmony and discipline, may even have done its job a little too well. It gave me the confidence to join in with other music groups, with high school theater, with so many kinds of art that gave my life so much joy. But we are finite beings in the end. And so when I sat my parents down at the end of 8th grade and said, I am doing too much, something's got to give, what went was the girl choir. I was eventually able to reconnect with Jan Westrick many years later, thanks to Facebook. And it was always a joy to run into her and her beloved husband, Fred, in downtown Princeton. I suspect, or at least I hope, that like any great leader, she got used to her charges moving on. I could tell her truthfully that I never stopped singing. I sing every day to myself, alone in my little apartment, even about things like doing the dishes. But maybe she would have been a little sad that I didn't rejoin a choir until 2022, when it was one of my first landing spots here at UUCP. Even though I left the girl choir, I don't think the girl choir ever left me. It was too fundamental to who I was, provided too many of the experiences that I return to every year to ever truly leave me. To go back to Schiller, the custom of modern life may have wrenched me apart from it for a while, but the magic power of choral singing still binds me and Janet Westrick and over 3,000 chorus members and alums together. Even now, if you believe in a heaven, it just gained a heck of a conductor and a section leader. We miss you, Jan.
I'm not a musicologist, but like Emma, I learned the love of singing at home. Tomorrow would have been my mother, Patricia's 100th birthday. She died 2 years ago at age 98, and all her life, she loved music. I have memories of going home on Saturday afternoons after a high school football game and hearing the opera on WQXR and my mom in the kitchen singing while making applesauce and cookies. My mother's paternal grandparents came to New York from Vienna in about 1870, and I'm sure they brought a love of music with them. Schiller's poem. Johann Christoph Friedrich von Schiller was born in 1759 in Württemberg. He studied medicine, philosophy, and history, and was a well-known playwright, occasionally creating characters who promoted revolutionary ideals. In 1780, Schiller unhappily served as a regimental doctor in Stuttgart and determined to attend the first performance of his play, The Robbers. He left his regiment without permission. He was arrested, sentenced to 14 days in prison, and barred from publishing any further works. Schiller managed to flee Stuttgart in 1782, traveling a circuitous route to Weimar. He's just 23 at this time. Though he and his father had thought that he would become a minister, he stayed with writing, weaving his biblical knowledge and theological ideas into his poems and plays. Schiller was greatly concerned about human freedom and the heroic struggle between instinct and ideals, such as one's instinct to play it safe rather than to sacrifice for one's highest ideals. At the same time, he and his friends, including his closest friend Goethe, were sharply critical and wary of the violence and ideological failure of the French Revolution. After completing his poem On die Freude in 1785, and after making revisions, Schiller still didn't think the poem was that great. It was fine, he said, as an expression of his friendship with Christian Kerner, but he called it, quote, detached from reality. Many of the poem's 18 original verses became the lyrics for hymns and drinking songs. Everyone from Western Europe to Moscow knew Schiller and his poem, thanks also to military conflicts and trade that helped art and literature cross boundaries in the minds and pockets of soldiers and merchants. At the same time, Schiller became fascinated by the construction by a former minister named Philipp Hahn of an astronomic machine called a planetarium used to search the heavens. Discussions of where science and theology meet filled the salons. Hahn's idea of a loving heavenly father finds its way into Schiller's poem. Brothers, above the starry canopy, a loving father must dwell. In the poem, we hear a reference to Elysium, the Elysian fields, the place of paradise where the righteous and heroic would live on in eternal happiness. Joy, spark of the gods, daughter of Elysium. Europe was and had been for decades, and really for centuries, far from anyone's vision of paradise. Though in the 1780s and early 90s, Emperor Joseph and his successor, brother Leopold, had moved toward religious tolerance and had made significant efforts to improve the lives of citizens through public education and economic reform, in Schiller's later years, with the world firmly in the hands of the autocrats and constantly at war, it was only the elites who enjoyed any autonomy and probably not much paradise. Schiller died in 1805 as Napoleon's armies conquered territories near and far. Austria's Emperor Francis managed to hold his place until Napoleon's forced exile, escape, defeat, and exile again in 1815. As the Council of Vienna met and created a new five-nation alliance, Austrian Emperor Francis's foreign minister, Metternich, had already begun to enforce strict measures to suppress liberalism and any voice that spoke of freedom. Some people think that the Ode to Joy, Freude, was intended to be an ode to freedom, Freiheit, but that it was too dangerous for Schiller to use that word. Leonard Bernstein, using the word Freiheit at the concert in Berlin after the wall came down, made a good case for that argument, but others are not convinced. In either case, Schiller's poem attempts to reconcile the beauty and goodness in the human soul, that divine spark, in a world of human-made violence and suffering. Meanwhile, struggling to find that divine spark in himself is Ludwig van Beethoven, born on December 16th, 1770, and living in Bonn, Germany, with his dear but downtrodden mother, Maria, his monstrous father, Johann, and his two younger brothers. Ludwig was not a happy child. By age 10, he had been labeled a misanthrope. Showing greater musical talents than his father and grandfather, arrangements were made for the 16-year-old Beethoven to study in Vienna with highly regarded musicians, including Mozart. But not long after his arrival, Ludwig received a letter from home saying that his mother was gravely ill with consumption. Following Maria's death, Beethoven had to stay home and be the caretaker and breadwinner for his family, as Father Johann Beethoven's alcoholism continued to erupt into violent episodes and make him incapable of providing or caring for his family. In 1792, at age 21, Beethoven had arranged for his brother's living and educational needs and was free to go back to Vienna, this time having the opportunity to study under Haydn. Beethoven's ninth. As early as 1793, Beethoven wrote to a friend saying that he wanted to set Schiller's poem Freude verse by verse. Beethoven's star was rising as he composed numerous great works at a fast pace. He completed his first 8 symphonies in 12 years and had generous patrons and plenty of concert appearances. Beethoven's down period began in 1815, and from that year until 1823, he was dragged down by entanglements in his nephew's life, worsening hearing loss, patrons leaving the area, and a persistent melancholy that had been with him most of his life. Andrew Solomon, in his book, Far from the Tree, writes, "It is not suffering that is precious, but the concentric pearlescence with which we contain it. We all have our darkness, and the trick is making something exalted of it." And that is what Beethoven did. By 1823, it had been almost 12 years since the completion of Symphony No. 8 in F major, and Beethoven was still determined to write the symphony that would include a choral movement based on Schiller's poem. Human voices would alter the traditional symphonic form, but Beethoven believed in his work and took the risk of ridicule and condemnation in order to celebrate, in those very dark times, humanity's innate drive to grow out of struggle and the human soul's capacity and determination to embody and reflect the shining divine spark of the heavens. From 1823 to 24, Beethoven did the bulk of the work on the ninth. This involved envisioning a better world and emerging from the one that he lived in, a utopia, perhaps not a real place to move to like we may envision Canada or Iceland or Oz, but as a kind of place, perhaps right where we are, where ideals of the people would allow everyone to flourish. Freedom, equality, inner and outer peace for every person. What kind of world do we wish for? And yet for Beethoven, there was a problem. Biographer Harvey Sachs writes, Beethoven's contempt for most human beings conflicted with his all-embracing love for humanity. We've had days, hopefully not lifetimes, like that. Beethoven questioned everything. Fortunately, his frequent railing against the Kaiser and the police state did not get him into trouble because the authorities thought he was merely an eccentric. He questioned religion and religious authorities. He and his friends had initially admired Napoleon, but as Emma says, when Napoleon announced that he would soon become emperor, Beethoven tore up the title page of the symphony he was going to name after him and named it instead Eroica. Everyone can be heroic by courageously seeking and living up to their inner truth, beauty, and goodness. As Beethoven's deafness caused or perhaps enabled him to hold and hear most of his great music inside him, he was certain that music could make us all better, stronger people, more courageous in our struggle for freedom. He wanted the listeners, and surely the performers as well, to experience the music inside them. And of course, with Beethoven, first, we have the struggle. In the Ninth Symphony, Movement 1, we hear the sound before creation. The tonality is not defined. Is it major or minor? Which middle note does humanity add? Is the choice in our hands? Further into the first movement, the loud kettle drums signify war. We know the struggle is here. Movement 1 ends with nothing but despair. We are in that dreaded place. I won't go through the first 3 movements because Beethoven generously quotes from them in the overture to Movement 4. And here, in the 4th movement, by far the longest, the orchestra begins in tumult. We hear the Schrecken's fanfare, also called the Schrecken's accord. Schreck means horror or shriek. It is the dissonant sound of a D minor chord played on top of a B flat major chord. We are no longer in the comfort of movement 3. What happens now? The cello and bass speak in unison, taking the voice of the hero. The hero's response calms the orchestra, but soon they respond with a reminder of the fury, the suffering, the clash of civilization, wars, oppression. They repeat the Schrecken's fanfare. Beethoven has told us in his written manuscript that he wants the orchestra to propose solutions that the hero will then reject. So the hero, voiced by the cello, rejects this horror fanfare and calms the orchestra. They play from movement 1, the descending A-E-E-A intervals. The beginning. Do we start the world over? In a very deep sound, the hero says, No, it's not that. The orchestra offers the lively dance theme from movement 2. The hero thinks and again responds, no, it's not that. The orchestra then tries to recall the sweet, serene vision of movement 3. The cello bass hero voice asks, isn't there something else? First the horns and then the strings and wind instruments offer a new melody. The hero likes this sound. The instruments present the full melody, 2 phrases like a conversation, adding new voices, all the people as if from many lands. There is a crescendo. The theme takes a majestic form. You might envision parading horses. Then shockingly, after a pause, the orchestra again plays the Schrecken's fanfare. The entire orchestra then responds with brisk, searching sounds, and at last, the baritone speaks up, echoing the theme introduced earlier by the cello bass voices, singing these words written by Beethoven. "O Freunde, O friends, not these terrible sounds. Let us raise our voices in more pleasing and more joyful tones." Soon we hear the theme of human possibility. All men shall be brothers. With verse 2, we hear the solo quartet. Those who can praise, join us. Those who cannot, steal away from our band. They finish with a dramatic and loud affirmation. The cherub stands before Gott, vor Gott, vor Gott. In the distance, we hear the bass drum. This is the only time in Beethoven's symphonies we'll hear it. The woodwinds and brass approach from far away, bringing the Turkish march. We hear triangles, bells, telling us of something exotic, but more significantly, that it is humankind that has triumphed. Verse, the tenors as soldiers sing, brothers, run your course as heroes to victory. A fugue follows, offering liberation from tyranny and from the spiritual crisis that has gripped all of humanity. We hear the full chorus sing the Ode to Joy theme. The key goes to G major, and then there is a pause. Robert Greenberg, in his masterful lectures for the great courses, says, quote, "This is all beautiful, but something is missing, the hymn of thanksgiving." First, we hear the hymn of humanity led by the tenors and basses, accompanied by low instruments. And these words, "Seid umschlungen Millionen, diesen Kuss der ganzen Welt. Be embraced, ye millions. This kiss is for the whole world." altos join in the hymn to the divine creator. We experience the height of the heavens and the shimmering of the stars. Millionen stars, planets, people, beloved ancestors, the gods, all beings. Again, introduced by the tenor and bass voices, the choir sings, brothers, above the stars, a loving Father dwells. Can you sense the creator world? Seek the creator above the stars. Joy, beautiful spark of the gods, daughters of Elysium, we approach your sanctuary, ye millions. This kiss is for the whole world. The sopranos sing Welt, world, on a high A for 13 measures. This is where I usually cry. Hearing that, the verse ends, and after a brief pause, the finale begins with the solo quartet, first the tenor and bass, then the soprano and alto singing Freude, Tochter aus Elysium. The full chorus joins in. They're back to the beginning with Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel weht. All humanity joins together where your gentle wings are spread. Your magic binds us together. The Ode to Joy theme speeds up. The voices all sing the three themes of inclusivity, humanity, equality, and joy. The choir's last words are joy, beautiful spark of the gods. The orchestra races up to its final scale to its great ecstatic conclusion, and the audience leaps to their feet and join the musicians in the encore, which is our encore today, hymn number 327.
Let's rise in body and or spirit.
At the end of our hour, we extinguish our chalice, knowing that its light carries us until we gather again. We thank Sue, Emma, Chris, and Margie, Jeff and Rebecca, the tech crew, ushers, Jorge, everyone who helped with today's service, for sharing the gifts of your hearts and hands and voices this morning. Today, many people around the world celebrate Palm Sunday as the beginning of Holy Week. Historically, Unitarians and Universalists, and now UUs, have believed that the central message of Jesus was not how we could be saved in the afterlife, but how we could become more human in this one. As this is what these difficult times need from us, may we go from here shining our light for all of humanity and for all beings, and may we always be grateful, hopeful, joyful, and bold. Amen. All blessings and amen.